My next guest is running for the District 19 Nebraska State Senate seat. Melissa, thanks for making time to be here today.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Good. Thanks for the Blackberry crown, by the way. Appreciate that.
You are so welcome. I'm loving it too, actually.
It's good stuff, huh? I'm Zach Miller with my co-host Vance Cameron.
Thanks for coming on, Melissa.
Yeah.
And we are touching base with Melissa Temple today. So, Melissa, let's get a little background on you. Where are you originally from?
Okay. So kind of a long story. Originally born in Oregon. My parents had moved out there for graduate school, and they lived there about 10 years in Portland. So the first of 3 kids were born out there, and then they moved out to Maryland for a job opportunity. And my dad was from Philadelphia area. And so 3 other kids were born. So I'm one of 6. So we lived out in Maryland, kind of near DC, and then moved out to Western Maryland. And then he got another opportunity out here in Norfolk. So they moved out here. I was still in high school, so they let me thankfully stay and finish out. And then I came back and joined him here. Went to Northeast. Nebraska Christian College was here at the time, so I went there.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, 4-year school. And so yeah, I feel like I'm kind of from a lot of places, but Norfolk has been home for about 22 years. They moved here.
That's great. That's a big jump from Oregon to Maryland.
Yeah, I know. And then into the, then to the middle.
Into the middle, yeah. So you've kind of been all over.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So what do you do for a living?
So I also did part of my degree here, Northeast and Nebraska Christian. Then I transferred out of state, finished my degree in education. So when I came back, I did some missions work, and then I taught for the ESU 8 as a special ed teacher. They have an Eastern Learning Center right here in town, kind of north of, on Eisenhower. And so I taught out there for 5-6 years. And so I'm still in education. A lot has happened in my life since then.
Right.
I left, did graduate school, seminary, came back again. So, but kind of started to feel more of a calling towards justice work, advocacy. I had gotten involved in anti-human trafficking, had helped start a nonprofit here in Norfolk. And so that's kind of what propelled me to start that kind of shift in my career, and wanted to do more to help survivors. And that eventually led to seminary. And so I am a chaplain now. I do hospice chaplaincy. I kind of found that during COVID, I was working as a hospital chaplain in Lincoln as part of my ordination requirements, and really, really loved it. It's really special work. So yeah, I do that. And then I still am involved in education. I tutor kids with autism.
That's really cool. The human trafficking part, how did that come about? I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, I know. I feel like that's such a big part of my story, though, of being really justice minded, really wanting to help people who are in vulnerable situations. But I had done some mission work overseas and in Brazil, and then went with, it used to be Crisis King, now it's Life Point. So they would go to India every year. They had helped build a school, and then would go back and just, continue to build that relationship near Hyderabad. And so I went with them one year, and then went to Calcutta and connected with a human trafficking group there that was helping women. And I think when I came back to Nebraska, I thought, I started to realize it's not just an issue overseas. It's here too. It might not be as visible. A lot happens online, but especially being on a major interstate corridor, we do. Yeah, it was a big issue. It still is. There is more that's being done. Laws have been strengthened, but when we started, it was about 2010, I think, and kind of started as a book group. We wanted to learn more about human trafficking, both internationally and here domestically. And that involved into becoming a 501c3. I think we might have been the first one in the state.
Involved in that?
Yeah, that was directly focused on, anti-human trafficking work.
Wow.
It was kind of early stages, and we were around maybe 7 years. And we grew. We did a lot of awareness work. We did kind of trainings. We started to get into legislative work, and eventually our goal was to have a restoration home and to rehabilitate survivors. But due to some life changes of some of the founders, we just had less and less people involved, and we eventually did disband. But at that point, which was a really hard decision, I think to figure out, okay, is it time to let this go? But at that point, there were a lot more groups that have been established in the state.
Interesting. That's good, I guess. At least we got some still.
Yeah.
Was that kind of your first step into seeing more politics then? Seeing the political side of things?
Yeah.
I guess you were kind of,
Yeah. I think working on bills, talking to some senators, realizing we can have a hand in changing systems and structures, definitely got me interested. Realizing laws actually affect people's everyday lives in really profound ways. And so I think that definitely helped me build more of an advocacy platform. But yeah, I think there were some other situations too that kind of led me more into the political arena. I can go into that if you want.
It's up to you. It's completely what you want to do.
Yeah. When I was in seminary, so I was at Princeton Seminary, and you're dual enrolled in the university as well. So I took a lot of classes at the Woodrow School of Public Policy, and just kind of was really interested in thinking about religion and politics and writing about it. I never thought I would actually do it, but I took some classes on leadership and policy, and it just made me realize that we all need to be involved. We can't just be complaining about issues or, bothered by them and not being active in finding solutions.
Or having plans and
Yeah. So, and when I came back to Nebraska, I, kind of jumped in to try to get involved in the community. And there was a political position that somebody had thought I might be good at with the NRD, because I had done some conservation work also in graduate school. So I ran for office, and so here I am, but it's not, it's definitely something that has been on the radar. I think things have been kind of moving and churning, and I was really, really interested in a bill a few years ago. Senator Rick Pauls was trying to pass to take away statute of limitations on sexual abuse victims.
Oh, okay.
Currently, I think they couldn't file any civil penalties past age 33 or 35. But a lot of victims don't come forward until they're in their 50s.
Right.
And so he was trying to extend that statute or do away with it. And he died, I think, before the bill could get finished.
Oh.
So I really wanted to pick it up again. And I started emailing senators and trying to generate some more interest, and just didn't get anywhere with it. So I think that also kind of started me thinking of I could do this work. There's some things I really want to change and make a difference in.
That's good. Are those all state? Are those all state bills for that specific thing you said? The
statute of limitations.
The statute of limitations, yeah.
Yeah.
Or is there federal limits on that too? I guess I don't know.
Well, it does depend on state to state. Yeah,
okay,
it does. Okay. Yeah, because there were some states, I think New York might have done away with theirs, and they even had, I think they
did it for 1 year.
And they did a look back window where they went back and they said, okay, even if it's no matter how long it's been, you can still go back and you can file those civil charges. Now, criminally, you can press charges, I believe, at any point if there was a child sexual abuse. But the civil liabilities for organizations, denominations, churches that kind of knew about it and didn't do anything about it.
Okay.
So
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Outside of the NRD, have you ran previously for or served on any other boards, committees, or public office?
I serve on boards. I don't know if it was prior to, I guess it was after I got on the NRD. I got on the Norfolk Parks and Rec board.
Okay.
And most recently, the Connections Project board. They're a organization, nonprofit in town, and they work on people with addiction challenges, mental health challenges.
Try to keep that a little closer.
Sorry.
I was going to say, you want me to turn it a little bit too?
Is that better?
Just that way, if you're looking at me, it looks a little, yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So addiction challenges?
Yeah, addictions and mental health challenges. And then of course with I Am for Freedom was our nonprofit. And
okay.
I was.
I've never heard of the Connections one.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Oh my gosh, you should.
The Connections, that's the chamber, the young people that they do like the golf tournament and stuff like that.
That's Norfolk Connect.
Oh, Connect.
That's young adult.
Okay.
Yeah, Connections Project. They've been around a while.
Really?
I think about 5 years.
Okay.
Not exactly sure on that, but
Okay.
their director, Rob, took over, I think, about a year ago.
Okay. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah,
That's
you should get
interesting.
him on the show, actually.
Yeah.
He would be great.
We're always looking for people. So what prompted you to run for this seat, the Senate seat?
Yeah. Well, actually, little known fact, I had thrown my name in to the ring when Flood left his spot as the senator here. So when he got elected into Congress, there was an opening and they took applications, and I applied. I thought, well, I think I could be good at this. I think I would be really passionate about this work, and never got an interview though. Never, nothing happened with it, and never got appointed, which was fine. And I, then ran for the NRD instead. So I think it's something I've known that I could be, I think, an asset in and make a difference, but. I thought I would finish my term on the NRD and do other things. And maybe someday,
Right.
if the opportunity presented itself, I could be involved in the legislature. But it kind of got spurred on, I think, because I realized, there's only so much I can do on the NRD, and especially with the issue of water quality and nitrates. And that was my biggest passion. And I go to legislative conferences annually. The NRDs work with the senators, and I realized I could, be putting forward some bills that could help, I think, support producers, that could continue to provide reverse osmosis systems for families that don't have clean water and protect lives. I mean, looking at the data of birth defects and cancer rates, especially childhood cancer rates, the urgency felt like it was there. This is a life and death issue. And so I think, to keep my promises to my constituents that I will work on this, I will make a difference in this area. So that was a big passion of mine. And I went door to door on my last campaign as well. And that really opened my eyes to needs in this community, with housing, childcare, and education. And so there's more I wanted to do than I can do on the NRD. And, so, in this position, you have to know about everything, it feels like, but you have a unique influence.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That is interesting how you get on some of these boards like that, and then you start to see more things. Like, I like that, the way you said that. It always seems to build from one spot, especially if you're passionate about something.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some highlights about District 19 and Nebraska that stand out to you?
Yeah. Well, I love being in natural resources, like we have, I think, more river miles than any other state, like 80,000 river miles or something like that. And I think that just presents a really unique opportunity for recreation. And so I love being outside. I love hiking. I love walking the Cowboy Trail. And just this community, the people, it always comes back to the people, but really that is what makes the difference. And I think also the ability to get involved. I don't know of a lot of communities where I could have jumped back in, after having gone and left for college and come back again and gotten this involved this quickly. It just seems like there's a readiness for new voices, and it's an exciting time. I mean, it feels like Norfolk is being rebuilt from where it had been, even 10 years ago. And I live downtown, so there's a lot of downtown development happening, and it felt like, there was just an invitation to let's help create what we want to see here. And I really love that.
The other bad part, the area is welcoming for sure, people back. The other thing too, I think, is there's not always enough involvement from people to want to be on boards and things. So I think that's another piece of it too that I wish we're trying to get out with this podcast. To, get involved. It's not that difficult to want to get involved anyway.
Yeah. There's lots of opportunity there.
For sure. What do you feel that Nebraska could improve on at the state level? It's a tough one.
Yeah, I know. I feel like there's a lot of areas. I mean, I do feel like there could and should be more advocates in the legislature for natural resources and for conservation practices, and being able to, work with ag producers, work with rural communities, work on the water issues. It's becoming more and more, I think, of a hot topic button, but there's still a lot of room for improvement and a lot of bills that could be passed. And I think recently one of the senators, might have been Wendy DeBurr, did a study on, the top issues, and it was water quality, I think housing and childcare. And I see that here too with housing, and I'm a renter. It's really hard to get into the housing market. It's really hard to be able to afford even rents have gone up so much. And then I don't have kids, but I hear from my peers the childcare issue. And it's not just here in Norfolk; it's all over the state.
It's everywhere, but yeah, childcare is definitely a tough one. There's a lack of it, and it can get kind of expensive. But my wife runs a daycare, in-home daycare, and expenses do get high on them too. So it's tough to kind of balance the price to. It's a tough thing.
Yeah, where is she at?
At our other house at 1211 Kansas Street, in the in-home daycare. They're Curious Kiddos Daycare.
Okay. So. Yeah, and I think I read a study from UNO recently that came out and said that housing is the top reason people are leaving the state. It used to be job opportunities, I believe, but it's changed to housing needs. Yeah, we don't want to lose more people. We want to bring more people in.
Right.
And then also I think the unicameral is super unique and special. And I think as a state, I'm running as an independent, like we need more bipartisanship or post-partisanship. And we need legislators that really will, set aside political differences and work for the betterment of communities and the people they represent.
Right. Going back to the water quality, are you open to maybe working with a collective of producers to make sure there's a balance between the producers wanting something and trying to set regulations on it?
Yeah. And I've always thought, education is better than regulation, incentivizing. I think there's a lot of fears and concerns over changing practices and that potentially affecting yields. And some of the data I've seen from NRD, being on the NRD and going to conferences is, we can be using less water, we can be putting on less nitrogen, and it doesn't affect yields, but I think, and it can save money to the producers, but just making that transition can be difficult and scary. And I think we do need to have more partnership and be able to, offer those incentives that will motivate the producers to try some new things. But it has to be, we have to work together on it. And producers and farmers, they're right there on the front lines, and I think everybody wants to be doing a good job. Everybody wants to be stewarding resources well. It's not that anybody wants the nitrates, but the corn requires the nitrogen. But we can also be adopting cover crop practices and no-till and things that will help offset that nitrogen.
Okay. What qualities and values make you an effective leader and decision maker? Another tough one.
Yeah. No, I am a good listener. I really value hearing people out. And I've always valued, I think, hearing people from, every point of view, like listening to people on every side of an issue so that I can become more informed, not just listening to one source or one idea. And so I actively pursue that. I try to seek out a diversity of opinions when making decisions and going out and visiting, making decisions on the NRD, going out and going to people's farms and learning more and hearing from people who have a diversity of views on things. And I'm a fighter. I'm an advocate. I'm kind of relentless in pursuing, I think, what is just and what is right. And just wanting to notice and see people that are kind of on the margins of society on issues that maybe they're not always, their needs aren't always seen, and trying to elevate that more, working in the disability world, living in, even in Ward 4, there's definitely some lower income residents in that. Probably every area of town, right. But you see it a lot, kind of
some
in that
wards
south
over
side.
others.
Yeah. And, just seeing that up close and realizing, there's more needs that could be addressed. So I think also I hope to always have a willingness to change my mind, to be humble, and to not be afraid of admitting I'm wrong and switching course. So those are all things I think are really important. I value in the leaders that I see that exhibit them.
Some people are worried that our District 19 state senator more focuses on Norfolk and
not
the surrounding areas. How are you going to bridge that gap to be able to serve everybody in District 19?
Yeah, because you guys are you from Battle Creek?
I'm from Battle Creek.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So you probably see that all the time. Yeah, it was interesting. So I took a long time thinking through this decision, like agonized over it because it was really weighty, and spent a lot of time praying, fasting, and asking people, like, what are the needs here? And, part of that soul searching, like, took me into the other communities. So I went to Tilden and hung out at the American Legion and asked people. And it was interesting because a lot of people didn't know, like, a lot about the legislature. They didn't know a lot about, like, the decisions that they make and how
You'd be surprised how many people don't know a whole lot about government
or
in
who
general.
the senator was.
Right.
And, and so that was eye-opening. But so I think kind of trying to position myself in these communities. And so as a chaplain, I'm driving 60-mile radius around Norfolk most days. And so I'm going into a lot of small communities. I'm going into Pierce, even Bloomfield, Center, Nebraska, like out of my district, but I'm out there and I'm seeing I'm meeting people in these towns. And I think that's really, really important. I can see how people might feel forgotten if the senator is not from their hometown, and smaller communities like Madison and Tilden and Pierce and Hayter, like, they are important too. They're an asset to us. And a lot of people are living out of town and coming into Norfolk to work. And they're a part of our community too. And there's needs there that they want to have addressed. So yeah.
I think it was definitely a concern from some people.
Yeah. And like when I was, hanging out in Tilden, meeting some people and asking them kind of what they needed, one of the big needs that came up was in rural medicine. And a mom told me she was really scared that she was going to have to call the ambulance and they weren't going to get there in time, because they used to have an ambulance service in town through the rural hospital. And then they don't anymore. Yeah. Okay. And so, they're still like 20, 30 minutes away from Norfolk or Neely. And, ambulance had saved her son's life once. And she said, this keeps me up at night. And so you do, things that like weren't on my radar become in the forefront when you actually
a lot of times yourself. If you're not living in it, you don't know for sure. There's a lot of things that happen in different cities that I don't really know about either. It's kind of crazy. Yeah. To be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think our economies affect each other too. And when, how Norfolk is doing will affect the surrounding communities, but probably vice versa.
Yeah,
as
definitely.
Well. Yeah.
That's crazy stuff with the ambulance stuff. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like Battle Creek, learning more about the flood control protection that's needed. All the communities have things that are important to them. And it's our job to not just expect people to come to us, but I think to go out and be present there, see it for ourselves.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. What are your thoughts on the recent news of Senator Mike McDonald switching parties?
Yeah, that was interesting.
If you want to give your thoughts, you don't have to.
Yeah, no, that is really interesting. And I think unfortunate. I think we need to have big tents when it comes to parties, and people are in parties for a lot of different reasons, not just a single issue. And with the abortion issue, like I've met a lot of just both pro-life and pro-choice Republicans and Democrats. And so that's not necessarily the only issue of why somebody would be in a certain party, because it crosses over. So I think I think there should be that room for your own beliefs, even if they're different from the dominant belief in your party. And I don't know if abortion was the only reason that he switched, but
seemed to be what I think they put in the news.
Yeah, he was censured or lacked party resources.
Which I think is, I thought that was crazy.
Yeah.
Just on one issue.
Yeah. Yeah. So and I think that's part of why I feel like independent fits me best, is because I don't fully align either way. And it feels like sometimes there is that pressure to fall in step. And there needs to be more freedom of thought and belief.
Do you feel that being an independent could be to your detriment? Or do you feel it's because it's what you believe, that's why you went that way? Or do you think how do you feel about that?
Yeah. it depends on how you look at it. It can be a detriment. I think if there are some people that maybe only vote Republican or Democrat
Blue
down
no
the
matter
ballot.
who or red.
Yeah. Are down the line. And I saw that when I was going door to door for the NRD. I've been independent, I don't know, for quite a few years now. I used to be Republican, and then I just realized, I think independent fits me best because I don't fit in. It felt like there was a lot of boxes and that I needed to check, and I don't check all of them. So, but when I went door to door, most people didn't care. Most people didn't ask me. It was a nonpartisan position. But there was a few people that said like, I only vote this way. And I'm like, and that's fine. But I think a lot of people understood kind of the nonpartisan independent side, especially how our culture is with politics right now and things being so divisive. So, it could hurt me or it could help me. I think some people want a fresh voice and they want, somebody who's not necessarily, not going to say like owned by a party, but obligated to, to please certain people or groups, whether that's in Nebraska or just in DC.
It's definitely happening that way. So I get it.
And I think like half of the country is actually, or half of the registered voters are independent, or close to half. And so they say like, oh, an independent can't win, for like a political position. But actually, if all the independents, did come around to an independent candidate, they could win.
I've always thought that too. But usually people are like, it's going to be a Republican or a Democrat, so I got to pick one or the other.
There's a lot of people there is a ton of people that will, in certain states, register independent so they can be in both primaries. They can vote both primaries.
Yeah.
So
Texas
I
is
find
like
that. I find the stat of there's half of them are independents. They're just saying they're independent so they can vote in both primaries.
Okay. That could be.
A large percentage of that percentage, I would say, kind of does that.
Yeah. And I know I've heard some people say here too, like, they switched to Republican for the primaries because they want to have more of a voice.
Yep.
If the candidate's ultimately going to be Republican, they want to be able to vote. So I think it's Texas that independents can vote in either primary.
I think there's a few states that allow them to do that, and then there's some that you have to pick one. The New Hampshire or Maryland,
you have to pick them.
You can.
Or what'd you say?
You can only vote in one of the two, even if you're an independent.
I misheard you.
Yeah. So,
but some states allow you to vote in both if you're independent. Both are on the ballot.
Okay.
Interesting.
So, yeah. And I mean, I think in Nebraska, maybe a quarter are independent. I think that's something like that. So it's definitely lower here, but it felt most authentic. I think I really wanted to be authentic. I don't want to pretend.
Authenticity goes a long way.
And I know independent's still ambiguous. People are like, where do you align? But the same could be said on Republicans and Democrat candidates too. Like, people align different ways, and you really just have to get to know the individual candidate.
Which is why we're doing the podcast. Yeah. Do you think that the parameters for TIF need looked at from the state level? Do you think that it is too easy to check off the boxes to apply for it? We've had a lot of conversations about TIF in the city level, and the quickest answer they always give us is, well, it's what the state said. It's what the state statutes are. Do you have any thoughts on TIF, or that it may be too easy to have the city councils vote on that kind of stuff?
To be able to blight it.
Yeah, because we've had that, and most of the city council mayors have told us it's easy to get to that point, and then they have to decide if they're going to do it. So maybe that point, that checkbox that they got to get to, is, do we need to look at that and maybe make it a little harder to get to that point and then have the conversation after that?
It's worth looking at. I need to study up on what the state permits, or what are the current limits statewide.
Well, these are kind of just the definitions of each piece of it, but it won't give us a whole lot. So I don't have enough information for you.
I just the way they kind of told us, the city council guys, like they can make anything look blighted. Like you take a picture, it's got a little bit of trash or tumbleweed.
I've been talking to some people on the council, though. They have turned down some TIF applications.
They have definitely turned them down.
That's not justified.
Which is great that they can vote on it, because obviously if you go look at a property and, that's definitely doesn't need to be that way, or they're looking for it for something else. I just think that at the state level, we might need to just change some of the wording maybe, or
not make it so easy.
Not make it so easy for a developer to come in and be like, I check all these boxes, so go vote for it.
Right, yeah. And then I've talked to downtown developers who didn't do TIF. They could have done TIF and they didn't need it. And then Andrew was telling me that with District Table and Tap.
Yeah, we've got Thad left us a list, but we haven't looked through it yet on what project used TIF and what projects didn't.
Yeah. So. Yeah, but I do hear that going. I try to go to some city council meetings when I can, and I do hear people saying there needs to be some limits. I think the concern though is, okay, it's going to take away from the tax base. But I guess the question is, well, if we didn't have TIF, would that developer still come or not?
Right. That's always the hot button question.
Yeah, that's hard to know.
I'm not against TIF. I just don't like it used in the wrong way.
Right.
If it's used correctly, I think it's okay.
Right. Yeah, maybe there needs to be a little bit more auditing. Does this person, would this development truly not happen without having TIF? Because the same tax base is the same property tax valuation that they're paying would be there either way. It's not like we would really be losing out more if the development didn't happen, because
correct.
10 or 15 years.
When we understand that, because we've been grilled on it now about 6 times, but I just don't think a lot of the community knows it. So they get up in arms when it's coming about the taxes, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a bigger issue than just TIF, I think. And it's kind of where I've always been. I get it. We're trying to fight for developers and stuff, but that's a nationwide issue. Maybe the culture has to change. Maybe we just got to stop giving away money to people across the board, countrywide. But I know we can't just fix it in one little town. But that's my issues. I want to change.
We're going to start the charge in Norfolk.
And I get it, but at some point we run out of money.
Yeah, and we do need a bigger. Tax is probably a whole nother question, but we do need a bigger tax base. But we also need to bring in corporations. We need to bring in development to help share in that burden.
The right corporations,
Right.
Yeah.
So, if that's our limited way of incentivizing, I definitely want to maintain that.
Well, it's really the only way to incentivize, which is another, I think, is a problem too. If it's the only thing we can do, well, then that's the only box they're going to go try to get.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I get it. We don't got to talk too much about TIF. I just bringing it up.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on it?
On TIF?
Yeah.
I think it's okay. Like I said, I think it's just, I don't think it always needs to be used. And I think some developers abuse it.
Absolutely.
That we read, I'm not going to bring up the projects, but there was a few projects that we did see that were like, there was zero reason for that to be, for TIF to be used on that. And I get the Johnson's Park stuff, the new development that's going in there. I get that one. I totally understand that one. That one makes sense. But there's just a few that I just...
Yeah.
So I'm for it.
Or the mall. I thought the mall was a really good use of it.
I thought the mall's a good one too. It's going to bring in a bunch of sales tax revenue. So
that's where it helps if you catch that revenue on the backside. But you got to have... And then it's going to last until that TIF's paid off. Like that's your other issue that you have that issue with. It's got to get paid off to get that tax coming. So if it doesn't get paid off or it gets pushed off and off and off and on and off, that's where you can run into a little bit of an issue. That is
the concern with some of these stores. They're going to come in here, build all these new stores. What if they only last 5 years? Then the revenue is gone. And, that's
you never got what you hoped to get out of it.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of trust involved.
There is. Just an issue we like bringing up because I like keeping
it's hot button.
It's
Norfolk,
hot button and everybody... Not obviously, a lot of people don't understand it. We didn't fully understand it until we've had more conversations, and everybody brings up a new idea on it. So it's kind of nice too.
Yeah, you guys probably are experts now. I know more than anyone.
Not quite experts, but I do understand.
But we
it
get
a lot more.
It's about the conversation, getting people to talk about it, and the word blighted that's like we've talked about a lot. That's where most people get really pissed about. Yeah, it's using TIF for good farmland. Maybe we shouldn't be doing that. Like it produces a good value. So I've run into a little issue there because you can make any farmland look blighted. Like you just take a picture of it looking like trash, you know.
But it's a good question as we're looking at how do if we are going to reduce the tax burden on property taxes, how are we going to make up for it? And
it's interesting stuff. We could talk on it for a long time, but I don't always like going too far into it because I think the viewers might be a little tired of talking about TIF, but that's okay. Kind of keeping on the same type of thing, or taxes. What are your thoughts on the EPIC option? Do you know much about it? You don't have to give too much into it. We just like bringing it up. We're going to actually have one of the guys that helped kind of put it together on after all these candidate interviews are done, and we'll get a better view of what it's supposed to be. But
Yeah, I mean, we do hear a lot about it. I think especially with, even on the NRD with, having a lot of ag base and people are really burdened, but it seems like the stats that I've seen, I don't know what EPIC is saying the sales tax raise would be. I thought it was 7%.
It said below 8%.
Below,
is what
okay.
It says.
But, independent, organizations, the Tax Foundation is saying it's more like 20 to 30%.
Yeah.
And that's a heavy burden to bear. And I guess thinking about what is that going to do for sales? What's that going to do for businesses? People on the border of the state can then jump over to Iowa or South Dakota and they can shop there. But so is the burden?
Some are already doing that in South Dakota.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, they've been doing it for
They've been
years.
doing it for many
so
years.
I don't like that argument because I mean, they've already been doing it.
Right. Yeah. But is the burden going to be, who's going to carry more of it? And just having, equitable relief. I mean, as a renter, I also think, okay, if we're eliminating property taxes, are renters going to actually get any relief or not? I mean, is there going to be a guarantee that the
rent comes down because you
would it come down?
Well, I said if
it came down,
if the rent comes down, that's when you would get your relief per se.
Yeah.
That's if the owner decides to do that.
Right.
If it is, but it's not only property tax, it's also income tax, inheritance tax, and corporate taxes. Corporate taxes then allow for higher wages, and you on top of also not having income tax. So I think it helps a renter because of even without the property tax, you're getting, if you're working, but if you're not working, to me, that's a you issue on not working. But you don't get taxed on inheritance, which I don't think you should be taxed on inheritance anyways. I think that one should already be gone. And then corporate taxes allow for growth of corporate. If we want more corporate here in the state of Nebraska or in our area, maybe that's a good way. If they're not paying as much corporate tax, they can pay a higher wage, higher livable income for people, more jobs. That's the way I look at it. I'm not saying that this thing's perfect.
Right.
It's not,
but it's a start.
It's a start. We like having.
I
the
like it better than what we
because
got. That's my personal opinion.
I agree.
Yeah.
We like talking about it because it brings up a lot of topic. We always come up with a different idea every time we bring this up in a podcast.
Yeah.
Vance,
I really don't like that it doesn't have grocery tax.
Yeah.
That's it gets away from grocery tax. I think grocery tax is the fairest way you can possibly tax the entire citizenship. That's the way I look. Everybody has to have groceries.
And even if it's a lower percentage on groceries too.
Yeah, just a little bit
on the groceries.
Just a little bit on groceries. And the way I look at it, people are like, well, then it affects the poor people disproportionately. Not the people that own the property are still buying sales tax. They still spend money on sales tax. So if they are supposedly the richest people, they have so much money, well, that means they're going to buy more stuff. Therefore, they're paying more in sales tax. So they still get hit that way as opposed to double dipping them. Is the way I look at it.
Yeah, because I have read that if you raise sales tax, it does disproportionately affect people who are lower income. And same with groceries. I think they spend a higher percentage typically of their limited income on groceries. Now there are states, I think,
it's a higher percentage, but if they're the richer people, I'm just using that word. If they're the richer people, then they're going to buy more groceries because they can. So that's a higher percentage. It's not a higher percentage of what they have in their bank account, I would say, but they're buying more. Yeah. So that tax exponentially gets bigger.
Yeah. It would be interesting. I have asked some people, I'm door knocking, and property taxes come up all the time. And I've asked, okay, what do you think about raising sales tax? What do you think about grocery tax? And a lot of people have not loved the grocery tax idea. And
I'm sure not.
Yeah. But I think people don't want a tax shift either. They want true relief.
But I think eliminating the income tax would be a bigger relief than people really think, in my opinion.
Yeah, because there was an income tax reduction, I think, in 2022. But from what I had read, it really affected people that I think were over $80,000 of household income. And I mean, the average in Nebraska, average household is less than 60. I think that's the same for our county.
I think it's like 57.
Yeah. So they weren't actually getting the breaks. And the same with corporate. There was some corporate tax relief as well. But, sometimes that actually benefits people out of state who are investors in that corporation. It doesn't always, I guess there's no guarantee that the right thing's going to be done. And the people that actually need relief are going to feel those effects.
Right. I just hope they relook at it and maybe move some things around. Yeah. Because it's not perfect. Yeah. But there are some great pieces to it that I think could be very beneficial in my opinion.
And we are really property tax heavy in this state. And I think we are averaging like 1.6. And I was looking up Iowa. I was interested in what are the surrounding states, and Iowa was, I think, 1.5. But yeah, we have to think about, okay, our priorities are. What are we willing to cut back on? There was an experiment, the Kansas experiment.
Haven't heard about that.
They did like widespread relief. I think it was from 2012 to 2017
on property tax.
It was on income taxes.
Okay,
and they lowered it pretty drastically, and the results were not what they had hoped. They underperformed in other states as far as their economy and their growth, and then they ended up, education went down. They ended up, their bond rating went down. And so I think it was in 2017, the legislature reinstated it because, it was definitely an experiment, they thought would benefit the state, but didn't do what they had hoped.
I do like that they at least experiment. We don't do much of that in Nebraska, I don't think, do we?
No.
I don't think so. It'd be nice to see something just to see if it works or not.
Yeah.
The other piece of the property tax is the rates haven't fluctuated a whole lot, but the evaluations is the issue.
Right. Because I think the rates have gone down.
They've stayed about, within a few percentage
not
points.
in our districts.
I guess
really.
the levies, maybe what I'm thinking of, like the school board levy, the NRD levy, like a lot of those have gone down.
The Battle Creek School Board's the highest tax district in the entire state. So, and they just did a new bond on it.
Yeah. But you're right. Like people, counties can lower the rate, but if the valuations rise.
I just think a lot of people complain about the percentages and the levy.
They just talk about the percentage.
But they never
tax.
talk about the evaluation of their homes or their property or anything. And that's really where you're getting hit.
Yeah. Because you hide it's a way to, all it is when they change the valuation, that's a way to hide your tax. Yeah. So they're taxing you more. Oh, we're giving you a tax break on your percentage, but your valuation just went up 20%.
Because I think in the last 4 years, a lot of the home valuations went up 40%.
Wow.
So
that's why this property tax is finally making a difference. Because it's been this way in the farmland forever. But now, a single homeowner is starting to realize, hey, this is happening every single year. Like, you're telling me your levy's changing, but my taxes are continuously going up.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess, valuations are great if you're ready to sell,
right,
but if you're not at that point, and it's hard for people to get into the housing market as well.
Yeah. And my apologies, it was 20%, not 40%. 40% would be asinine.
Yeah.
But anyway, anything else you want to talk on the Epic stuff?
Or taxes in general?
Or taxes in general? I don't think I have any more tax questions.
Yeah, I think, people have asked, like, what are the solutions? What are the answers? And I have a lot to learn on it. And I know there probably is no easy answer, or we would have had it by now. But I have been reading like all the exemptions that people and companies are eligible for in the state, and I think closing some of those loopholes. I think data centers are exempt.
They're going to keep making them though. That's the problem. People always find exemptions.
Yeah.
They're just going to keep finding
identifying those, and because there's a lot of corporations that come to Nebraska because our energy is really cheap, our electric's really cheap, and if some of those people aren't paying their fair share in taxes,
right.
That hurts the rest of us. And I think, we have to bring more people in to carry the burden. We have a lot of land. We don't have as many people, and, continuing to incentivize businesses and trying to grow our tax base will be important.
Did you say data farm? Is that what you said?
A data center.
Data center.
Yeah,
data center?
Yeah. Like Facebook and Google and places.
Because there's some in Omaha now.
There's Google in Omaha.
Mm-hmm.
So they're exempt.
I was reading on the state exemptions, and that was one thing I think Pillen did want to change was changing that exemption, I believe. But I don't know. I don't think it happened in this legislative.
Because those data centers probably don't bring too many jobs, right? Because a lot of it's just going to be maintenance, isn't it? On those data centers?
I think that Google campus, there was quite a few people.
Was there? Okay. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know much about it.
I guess the general
I don't know the
income,
number, but
I was just trying to think, if they're exempt, that's crazy.
Yeah. Like I think some things related to pets, grooming services were exempt. And I don't know if that's like a big moneymaker, but just kind of looking at some of those, looking at equitable income tax relief across the board, not just, at the top. And someone was telling me about Dixon County brought in a new wind energy farm, and they were able to reduce their property taxes about 30% because of the income that generated and the land leases. And so I think, we do have an asset here with our renewables and with our wind energy, and our capacity is in the top 8 in the nation. So I think encouraging that, like what are our assets and how can we leverage those and bring relief.
What's your so the wind farms, solar panel farms. If we're gonna do, are you good for both? I don't know much about it, so I don't want to get too into the weeds on this. But do you feel which one do you feel is more efficient, more in a better way, more environmentally friendly?
Well, I don't want to speak on that too much
You
unless
don't
I
to.
know. Like I
You
want
don't
to
have
be sure
to.
what
I
I'm
just
saying
wanted
is
your thought.
accurate.
I guess your thoughts on it, not your.
I would say both. I mean, we have that big solar panel farm out going out towards Battle Creek actually,
Yep.
and I thought somebody told me it was one of the largest ones in the state. And people, did you guys sign up for the credits? You paid ahead, but then you got, people are showing
We're
like
a rural power district.
Oh, okay. Yeah. People that are using them, I think my mom bought some, like, about 20% reduction in their electric
Interesting.
cost. So, yeah, I think, really channeling more of that. I hear more about the wind development than I do about solar, but
I just think the infrastructure for the wind energy is I don't know. I don't know if I like it or not.
okay, why not?
The cost to be putting it up, and then they get the leases are there. But what I've heard is that they are more expensive to maintain than what they're actually producing in energy.
Okay.
To build and maintain.
They
They never make up their
cost.
It's subsidized. That's why they make up the cost.
I do. Yeah, I do know it's subsidized. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts on it.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, I've heard people say that. I'd want to read like more of the research on it.
That's fine. That's how I don't want to get into it too much.
Yeah, but I mean, we are definitely. It seems to be gaining traction. I think Northeast was one of the first colleges that had like the WIN program and training people in it, and so I think it's something. Maybe we'll get better at it. Maybe it's more costly right now.
It's more efficient.
Because
I'm okay with trying new things like that. It just you see the first sets of windmills go up and now they're all over the place. I don't know if we have enough data to fully understand if they are going to be efficient. If they are efficient, that's my only issue on that. But again, we don't got to get into the weeds.
Yeah,
on that.
I mean, it's definitely an economic opportunity right now.
Right. It's interesting. It's interesting stuff. I try to read up on as much as I can, but I'm not an expert by any means.
Yeah.
I would like to discuss a few resolutions and bills that have been through the legislature in the past year that didn't fully go through. So you'll probably, if you are elected, you'll probably have to talk about these next year. What are your thoughts on legislative resolution 22CA that would extend term limits from 2 to 3 years? Or 2 to 3 terms.
Oh, yeah. I've asked some people about that and what they think. And I think our state is pretty much against extending term limits. When it's been on the ballot before, a lot of people turn it down. 4 term limits. They're for limiting.
They want
They want to keep it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
it was at 3 and it went down to 2.
Yeah.
And now we're trying to go back to 3.
Go back up to 3, yeah. And I think term limits are good. I don't think people should, career politicians aren't really benefiting a lot of us. And I think
they benefit themselves pretty well.
I guess the question is, what should that limit be? Because there is something to say about having institutional wisdom and knowing the ropes and being able to become better at your job with time. And so senators have told me that, after just one term, you're kind of just getting started and learning about it. And so, could 12 years be beneficial so we don't have as much turnover with new senators? Maybe. People can always come back again. People have done that. I heard Ernie Chambers might be coming back again. I had heard that they had instituted him, though, partially to get him out.
It went from 3 to 2 to get rid of Ernie.
Yeah. But I don't know. There's always the argument that, our elections are every 4 years, the public will decide, but it is a lot harder for an incumbent to get out of office.
Right.
Just naturally have an advantage. And so, term limits are good for that.
I see both sides of it. I definitely think we need them at the federal side for sure. But on the state level, I've heard a few people talk about it. You just said it, that even the city council guy said it takes 2-3 years to fully understand what's going on. So I at first I was for bringing it or leaving it at 2, and now I'm thinking maybe 3 would be okay, maybe even 4, just to get people in there. But then it's hard, you can't get them back out if they're not doing a very good job. So I'm kind of on the middle of the road with that too. I mean, I don't know.
I'm fully on 2. My argument too, I understand it takes some time to get better at your job. Then that's the way I look at it. If you can't succeed, then you can't succeed. You're not cut out for it. And it sounds harsh, but that's what I believe. You signed up for it. Let's do it. If you can't do it, get out and let's get somebody else in there that can do it, that thinks they can get it done and get it done before their first term. Because I guarantee you there's people out there that can get in the role in less than a full term. Like it just, there is.
Yeah.
So let's find those people, no matter what side you're on. If you're going to hit the ground running, let's get after it. Let's get people that are better at their job. The other argument, and we've talked about it, where I can kind of see is if you are completely, let's say you're not joining a uniparty,
Okay, yeah.
you know what I'm saying? You're at least slowing things down, or you're fighting for something. I get stuff like that, like the Rand Paul model. He didn't really do anything, but he got to muck stuff up a little bit. Somebody like that was in there, and he wasn't the guy in there. Ron Paul, not Rand Paul. Rand's his boy, but Ron Paul, at least mucking it up in there forever and ever and ever, and not in there to enrich himself like some of the uniparties. Right. And so I see that, and definitely I 100% on the federal level, we got to do something. We got to figure something out. But I look at it as we're at 2. Let's just leave it at 2. I just don't see going the other direction at this point. Yeah. And so I probably would never vote to go the other way.
Yeah, and
that's just my feeling.
And people can come back again.
You can take a term off. You sit it out for
4 years. I like the idea of new energy.
Because if you sit it out and that's a really good argument on the side of it takes forever. Well, you sit your 4 years out, that you should be hitting the ground running right away on your next term. If you're that good of a person and you sit 4 years out and you come back in, it takes you 0 time to get back going. So that's.
Yeah, and I look at it that way. I don't know at the federal level. I mean, because I agree with term limits too. I just don't know what that should be, especially for the House, because it's a 2-year term.
Right.
So should they get 4 consecutive terms or 6?
Right.
Let's stop it at if you have a pulse, you can maybe be in there. let's not have non-pulse people in there.
Yeah.
And you do appreciate age and wisdom, and not being
to an extent.
Yeah.
To an extent.
Not as long as your vote's not getting whispered in your ear.
Not if you've been in government for 40 years and you don't actually know what's going on out in the real world. You have no idea what the world's doing.
Yes, staying in touch with the people. Yeah. And that's really valuable. And I think even being bivocational, still having a job, knowing what people are, what the issues are.
Right.
They technically started this experiment of America with you serve a short term, you just leave your job for a session to go talk about it for 2 months, and then you go back to your job. So, and not live in DC. You don't go live in a certain area with all your friends. You live in your state, and then you just go for a little bit and then you come back.
One thing I think regarding changes in the legislature, and I don't know if I would ever bring it up or not, because it kills politicians when they do, but the salary, what people make. And I think when the legislature was created, the unicameral was created, the idea was, let's have really good experts who are dedicating their time to this and be very well informed. But the problem is, and I think that they wanted the salary to be higher. That did not pass. And so they've had a pretty low salary their entire time in office. And I'm not saying give people a lot of money, but I don't know, make it like a teacher salary, make it so they don't have to have 2 or 3 other jobs. And, they're trying to do that and be in office at the same time, or only people who are retired or independently wealthy can be in office. I think I would like to see to have a more equitable income, so that anybody could run for office, that you don't have to, already have certain advantages.
Right. I would like to see, I was just talking with my mom about this the other day, that I would like to see a little more age disparity also in the federal and in the state.
The state's pretty it's pretty diverse in age.
Is it?
Yeah.
I thought it was heavier on people over 50.
There's a few, but there's quite a few younger people in Congress. Maybe not enough, but
yeah, I just like having
I bet it's more than Congress is.
Yeah. on both sides of it.
Anecdotally looking at
My
it,
reasoning is because I don't think, and there's probably not enough of them to make a conversation difference. Maybe if they're, I don't know. I'm not saying that correctly, probably, but
one big difference though is I think a lot of the younger senators are from more urban areas, Lincoln and Omaha, because they could, work another job at night.
Yeah.
Amanda McGill, she had 3 jobs at the same time, like Target and YMCA, and just, but which is unfortunate that you have to do that. But yeah, if you live there, I don't think there's a lot of rural senators who are younger able to.
That would be nice.
Yeah,
just to
kind of have that bridge.
Just to have conversation. I don't know. Like when my mom, when her and I talk, we have differences of opinion. We may come to the same conclusion, but we have differences of opinion. I bring new ideas. She brings different ideas. I just think it'd be nice to have that more even in both the federal and state level.
Yeah, bringing different.
I'm not saying that correctly. I'm not getting my thought out correctly, but that's all right.
I get what you're saying. I agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah, and more women in politics. I mean, I'll always be for that, and we've come a long way too, but I think there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, I didn't mean just men. I meant all ages of any gender.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Everybody's got good thoughts. I just think they need to come together more and have good thoughts, like have conversations, not just fighting about whatever and attacking each other. That's my big thing.
Yeah, and if only wealthier people can afford to be in office, you're also skewed in your opinion of what the needs are. So I think, variety of opinions and backgrounds and socioeconomic statuses.
As long as you can have the conversations, that's an actual, not just a screaming match.
Yeah. A whole new skill.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the winner take all bill?
Oh yeah, I don't like it. I think we have so few areas that we are. I mean, are like that we pride ourselves in, that we're unique, and I think the unicameral is one big thing. I think having that split vote is another thing, and I don't think it would. I know usually that District 2. Well, it's only been a couple of times that they've actually gotten that extra vote. But was it Obama and
Biden?
And then
Biden.
It's been since Obama.
Yeah.
I think Trump won it the first time.
Okay.
Hillary did not win it. I don't think. I could be wrong, but
yeah, I think whoever it doesn't matter which side, but like if that's what that district wants, that they should have that extra. It's like one vote, but I mean that could make the difference. I'm not saying it's inconsequential, but.
Well, that was the one instance where people would say, my vote doesn't count. Well, that one vote did.
It did count. It did count. Yeah, especially in a state like ours where, predominantly is going to go one direction. Other people feeling like it still matters that they show up to the polls.
I've changed my mind back and forth on this a lot after hearing some more hearing people talk about it and having conversations. I'm not sure where I fall now anymore.
I don't really know either. I think it's weird that we're one of 2 states that do it.
Maine's
the other one. But I mean, Texas was trying to go the other way this year. They were trying to
be like us.
Yeah, they were trying to do it this.
And they have a lot more electoral votes at stake.
Yeah,
I think leaving it the way it is better. The more I think about it, only because
I could be convinced either way. So
yeah, I know that's the thing. You could probably convince me either way. I just think us as Republicans need to think about it a little more because a lot of them are fighting for it, and I'm like, okay, now what happens when we lose that?
Yeah,
then we lose it all. So
yeah,
that's a tough pill to swallow too. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean that's hugely partisan issue.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's interesting to think about.
So I think the argument for the Republicans, if you were to get rid of it. Well, I guess, they would lose 2. They would get 2. So if it stays that it is, and then the Omaha and Lincoln got so big that you could win the popular vote that way, then they would get the 3, and then we'd still get 2. I mean, you get 2 the other way. So interesting. I don't know. I have no idea. I couldn't tell you. I'd look at it both ways.
It's fun to talk about, though.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know when's the last time if they've tried to change it. I know it's come up in other sessions, but being an election year too, it's more prevalent at that time.
Yeah. I also can tell you that I probably didn't know much about state level stuff until we started doing this, and I've taken a deep dive.
Yeah.
on a lot of things.
Is that maybe a problem with our public school system?
That could be too. Yeah. I think it's just public in general trying to find, or even, I guess, caring, once things start affecting you.
Yes. Yeah.
Then you really start paying attention.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If we would just do it in our early 20s, start then, or even earlier than that, obviously, but really get into it in your 20s and understand how the government works and be more conscious of what's going on. 18, I guess, when you vote, be an educated voter.
Yeah.
We really push for that.
Yeah, I don't think you should be able to vote if you don't have an informed decision.
Yeah.
I know, and there's no way to control that. And
there's not.
Yeah, I mean, so much money is spent on elections, and that it frustrates me. I mean, because I don't have much money, but also because it's
you can sway people that don't pay attention. But that's why we're doing this long form stuff, because
we really think that this.
Yeah, I want the politicians to change. I'm tired of and it's frustrating to me, is we got to get rid of these canned answers, these 5-minute hits, these 2-minute, 10-minute hits.
Yeah.
I'm done with that. I don't want that anymore. I want long form interviews. But I had this conversation with my dad. Which he's been listening to more podcasts of different things since we've started it. He's listened to other people and stuff like that. But we have to change the voter base too, to seek out the information of the person. And that's on a long form interview. You learn more, because their opinions are always going to be out there. No matter, they could can one answer because they know what the question's going to be, and they're going to have it prepared and they're going to answer it in political speak. But eventually you're going to contradict that if you're lying or you're bullshitting. Mm-hmm. People are going to know your views on a long form interview because it's just there. Yeah. Like, it's easy. Yeah. You don't say it outright, but people can see it, and you can, in my opinion, when I think in my brain, it's easy to tell somebody's how their overall is by listening to the whole thing. Maybe some people can't see it that way, but I see it. It's easier to tell the person. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's missing in politics too. So many issues are a conversation. It's not just yes or no. It's nuanced and it's complicated. And so I appreciate having more time to fully explain, why you're in a certain position and why you feel a certain way. But yeah, we've kind of gotten away, I think, as a society from having those conversations and actually talking, and
we've gotten away from both sides of the spectrum talking to each other too, in the public.
Yeah.
You don't get a whole lot of discourse between Republicans and Democrats anymore.
Yeah.
Civil discourse.
Yeah.
You can't sit. We couldn't, there's some people we couldn't go sit and have a conversation about abortion without somebody getting upset. Mm-hmm. We try very hard to not attack the person. We try very hard not to, do things like that.
Yeah.
And it's very hard for some people to have that conversation. It's a tough conversation.
Because there's tension. I mean, it's hard to sit in that tension and to really listen to someone and fully and with an open mind.
Active listening. You got to really hear what they're saying. A lot of people sit down, and I forget there's a term for it, but they're ready. They're getting ready for their next fire back.
They're already thinking about it, not listening fully to the answer.
Right. It's interesting.
Yeah, but I definitely agree with the, pouring more into civics with young people. And, I tried as a teacher to really help my students become informed. They weren't voters yet, but they would be someday, and to learn about the issues. And I think all voters could do with a little bit more education probably. And
it's more important now than ever, I think.
Yeah. And look, and where you get your education too. Where are you going for your sources, for your news? Just trying to get it from a variety of places.
That's the thing, is getting it from getting different perspectives and then form your own opinion.
Yeah.
That's really
which we've talked about a lot. And that's kind of why we started both these podcasts, was because even on our other one, we'll pull from multiple, it's our opinion.
Yeah.
We call it our opinion. That's why it's useless assumptions. But it's our opinion. But we want people to critically think. You don't even have to go to a bunch of different sources. You can look at one headline. Just critically think about it. Like, are they trying to push me a certain way with this headline?
Yeah.
Do I need to read into it? And a lot of times you can read the article, and the article is going to change what the headline says. So, and a lot of people, I know it takes time. It does, but you can't bitch about it if you're not going to take the time and put the effort in.
Yeah. So. And who's putting it out? Like, what are the conflicts of interest there potentially? What are the biases that might be in that article based on who's pushing it out? And I think also, just discouraged with how there's so much vilifying of both sides too. And yeah, I think that's probably another reason why I'm independent is more accurate for me. But yeah, changing the discourse is something that even like me entering the race, I was hopeful for. Like I just want to bring different views to the conversation.
Makes sense. You okay with taking a quick break?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're back. You guys know me. I got my hour pee breaks in. So, but everybody else pee too. Okay. Except Melissa. She didn't have to go. She's holding it in. So we're going to kind of get right back into it. Still sticking on the bills. Legislative Bill 575, the Sports and Spaces Act. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And I guess I've talked to, people who are involved in the school district here who, they have their opinions on the way Norfolk voted. And I think what I've learned is the NSAA already has really strict standards of who can go through that process. And still play sports who have transitioned, and a lot of testing that they've had to go through. And I've heard it's really arduous. We could look up the exact numbers, but someone had told me maybe 7 have tried and less than 4 have actually gotten approved. So it doesn't seem like people are I guess I don't think people are taking advantage of it. I don't think people are transitioning for the purpose of being able to play sports and do better. And so, I think if aligning with those state standards and leaving it up to the individual school districts to decide is probably where I would land on it. I think, it's kind of like I think the Olympic Committee also has pretty strict, it's like hormone testing and things like that. And they do the same thing at the state level just to make sure nobody has an advantage. Like, I don't believe people should have advantages. But if medical testing shows that they don't,
but they do.
The problem is once they go through puberty,
that power lifter that won the women's powerlifting, she had a huge advantage over her competition, like massive advantage. And
was there hormone or like testing involved in that process? Or?
Yeah, there's testing. Mm-hmm. So her hormone levels at that point are lower, but she's gone through puberty. Bone density is bigger. You're a bigger human being. You've just grown. I look at it as we're trying to protect. The whole point of Title IX was to allow women to have a sports space, right? And not have anybody go take advantage of it. So I want that protected. Mm-hmm. And we talk about a lot of my other podcasts. I'm not a fan of women's sports. I don't watch it. It's just
even Caitlin Clark.
He just had the defender last night.
I had the defender last night for 30 minutes, and she's really good for women's sports. I don't find enjoyment watching women's sports, but I want them to be able to get the same benefit of playing sports that I did as a boy, as a young man.
Absolutely.
I think sports are really good for everybody. I think maybe not everybody's doing it to create an advantage, but it's this, we talk about a lot, slippery slope. It happens. There is clearly people that did it for an advantage. I mean,
this power lifter situation, was that a high school situation?
That was in the Olympics.
Oh, okay.
I was just saying when you talk about the Olympic side of it, they say they're doing testing, but I find it hard. I just want to protect women's sports. It just makes no sense not to protect women's sports.
And the problem is when you start passing things like this, and it does start to happen more. So obviously it's not happening a whole lot in Nebraska yet, but you see something like Leah Thomas, goes from 575 in the world to number 1
in men's,
575 in men's, and then goes to swim, compete in the women's and gets number 1. Right. And then it comes to sports where it's more aggressive, wrestling, or even was it basketball? There was a problem. Basketball.
A high school in Maryland or New Hampshire or somewhere over there. 3 of the girls got hurt going against this transgender woman.
And the problem is once you have more of them, more of it happening, you're going to see more and more problems. So I get that it's not maybe as big of an issue yet here, but I could see it being a problem.
And I'd want to look more into what are the NSAA guidelines,
and
standards. But yeah, from what I
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, and I think there are medical and physical exams that go into that, and the hormone testing and all of that. And it gets tricky with, definitions. And I mean, people can have, different chromosomes to naturally by birth or extra. There's always exceptions to different situations of, I guess I haven't come across situations where it seemed like people were trying to take advantage of it,
Right.
but I'm probably not as up on these, some of the Olympic level athletes.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. And what about the spaces part of it? Locker rooms in high schools. That's our biggest point is high school and college. Like after that, we're all adults at some point, but you wouldn't want like a club to have a unisex bathroom, would you? Like you as a female, would you want a male in your bathroom?
No, probably not.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. So I mean, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I get that there are spaces where it could be safe if you're all.
We're looking at the 1 out of 1,000 people that
Which
are going
kind of
to.
sucks. So our argument, it comes down to that. But
yeah, and I think that also came down to individual districts kind of deciding, or on a case by case basis, that what was best for the kids. I guess I also want to bring to the conversation. I mean, bullying happens on both sides. Sexual assault could happen on both sides. I mean, it doesn't have to be an opposite gender thing. So there's risks either way.
I've seen that too.
And thinking about like who is vulnerable. And you obviously, my heart is always to protect the vulnerable, like always. And so I think there's vulnerabilities on both sides too. There was that situation in Oklahoma with that boy who was, he was forced to use the girls' bathroom. Then he was bullied and assaulted by other girls. And he died a couple days later. And they're not sure yet if that was related. His injuries were related to the death or not. But
why was a boy in the girls' bathroom?
well, so he was by birth a girl.
So it was a girl that was using the girls' bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and had been identified as a boy. And so people can be both sides can be vulnerable, I guess, too. And it'd be great if everybody had like their own individual private stalls and all bathrooms are.
Well, women's are kind of like that in the first place too. So I kind of, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. But, I think protection is really important. Protecting everybody, whether or not, they're, which side they're on, I guess. But it's definitely a complicated issue.
It is.
And it's not easy. And you also want to paying attention to the mental health aspects too of inclusion and the depression rates of these kids. And
that's where I think, in my opinion, I'm going to preface it with that, is that I think a lot of it is mental health in the first place. That's my opinion on the whole piece of that. When, they're young, impressionable minds. I think now that it's getting pushed a lot of people want to be unique, right? They want to be different so that they get more attention too. So I think it all kind of does still boil down to mental health and social media and things like that too. I see where you're coming from, but I think it stems from a mental health issue.
There's a huge rise in mental health concerns among youth across the board, and kids that are trans. I think the suicide ideation rates are much higher. And risk of death is much higher. And medical studies have shown that if they're not in an accepting environment, that increases even more. So I guess in my heart really is like for life in all situations. And I think to be pro-life means like, I want to protect people. And we protect kids, and, if the rates of suicide are going up, then I want to protect them and support them.
I just saw just to kind of touch on that, I saw a recent study too, where people that want to detransition, there's even higher suicide rates there than there is in the beginning of it. So
there's been a lot of studies that show transitioning doesn't lower the suicide rate. It stays exactly the same from before transition to after transition.
So it's interesting to see which
force them to not to or let them transition. The suicide rate stays at like 40%.
Right. The interesting thing is, which study you're looking at.
That's true. Yeah, because I was like, I read one yesterday, I think, that American Journal of Pediatrics that was showing reduction with gender affirming care. But I'd be interested in reading. Yeah,
it's just interesting that it's all mental health. All of it is. I won't see it any other way. But I think I don't know how to fix it. I don't have an answer for that, but it's interesting.
Yeah. And kind of leaving it up, I guess leaving up to families too, to make some of those decisions. And not kind of overreaching into their lives.
I definitely don't want the schools doing it outside of the parents' control. Basically forcing a transition on a child with the parents not being involved. That's a problem. Like if we're allowing schools to do that, there's certain like Oregon or Washington, one of those over there created a law that the school can take it. The kid can come to the school and say, I feel like a man or a female or a male. And they, without talking to the parent, can help.
They can't give medication though, right?
In one of those states it can. They passed a bill on that. I'd have to find it.
Can you see if you can find that, Cam? Oregon or Washington, a bill to, how would you put that? To be able to...
Gender affirming care
for kids in schools.
I don't know if
that would be concerning to be giving
very concerning.
medicine without
knowledge.
It was something that the nurse could do it or something. It was interesting. We'll see. We'll
basically call it as a child abuse is the way they use it. They use it with Child Protective Services because you're not...
But the child's not removed from the home.
They can be removed from the home. And it was a bill. I'm not 100% certain it was passed, but it was a bill that they were working on to get passed. And I thought I heard it was passed, but it might not have actually passed. It's in one of those Pacific Northwest states up there somewhere.
Very interesting that the language they tried to use, and that's what I was going to say too. It seemed like a lot of the senators for this sports and spaces bill got stuck on the language of the act and not the principle of it. From
language as in what?
You like Vargas brought up. I'm not going to be able to remember exactly the language that they were speaking on. I looked this all up and I have now forgot. I'm sorry. I forgot exactly what they said. My apologies.
I know. It's hard to read those those bills are pages and pages
they're
long.
miserable.
And they're so long. And that's what I had heard on one of those bills. Like even people that might have agreed with it in principle, like there was some things in it that made it a bad bill.
Right.
So really you have to know like what are the issues in this bill that are problematic that might be a reason why you're not voting for it.
Right. So my apologies on that. I should have put those in my notes.
Oh,
but
okay.
Do we want to stick on this, or do
we can keep?
Let us know. Yeah, let us know when you find
if you
it,
pull
Cam.
I would be interested.
Yeah, you're good. I'm going to move on, and then just let us know when you got it. So I have had many people come up and ask me, well, what are the candidates' values and beliefs? Where do they stand? What would you like to tell some people or our listeners that may think you may lean in one direction more than the other?
What have you heard? You're gonna be honest.
If I'm gonna be honest, what I've heard is that people would say that you lean more on the left side than the right. We get that you're an independent, but what would you want to say to those people that maybe think that you lean more left?
I think it definitely depends on the issue, and I guess socially, is it economically? How do you define that? And
right.
I think I try to find the middle in most situations. I think I really do try to find the center. I think. Truth is often found there somewhere, or, at least what's reasonable and best. So I think it would probably depend on the issue. I think, one probably misconception about me is, that I'm like for abortion, and I'm not. Like I am actually very pro-life.
And we'll talk about that here in a second.
Okay. But it's, I think I can also see some nuances in it and like some exceptions, some protections that we need when people really do need abortion. And working on prevention, like what if we invested more in preventing? Like nobody wants an abortion. How can we work on reducing unwanted pregnancies in the first place?
We can just talk about it now. I want to say one thing. I just wanted to get that because we have heard. I have heard that a lot. That people have a misconception. I think. Maybe of what you may stand for on certain things where they see you, maybe there's something that you may lean towards the Democratic side and like, oh, then she's everything, every piece of what she's going to believe is going to be all that way. So I wanted to get you to be able to speak on how
I think people want to know that you're going to be
open and
truly independent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to ask
that's why it's be good on a conversation, a long form conversation like
Right.
this.
Yeah. And I think, it'll be interesting too. Like, I think I've been getting probably more support from people more on the left, and, even maybe groups. And I'm going to take support from anyone.
Right,
Like, if you want to
right.
donate
Well,
to me, please donate.
We don't blame
to me.
you.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe there would be some exceptions, but I think, if Republicans want to support me, awesome. If Democrats, awesome. Like, I'm not going to turn that down. But I really believe that I don't have an allegiance towards anyone. I have an allegiance towards the people, and that's hard too, because everybody's going to have different angles of what they want. And our community is pretty diverse in beliefs. And so I think, yes, you listen to everyone. And then you elect someone that you trust is going to make a wise decision and
an educated decision
and get all the information and hear all the voices on every side. And then at the end of the day, I guess you're trusting that person, and you're voting on them based on character, their values. And I guess so I took this one class in grad school on value-based leadership, and just, that was helpful for me to distill down, like, our decisions are going to be based on our fundamental values, and just really questioning, like, what is your value underneath your value? Like, where does the actual basis come from? And so my values are, rooted in my faith. They're rooted for helping people. They're rooted for life and helping communities flourish. And just like, these are the things that are going to be the basis of my decisions.
Interesting.
So I did find it. It wasn't schools. It's Washington Bill SB 5889 was passed. It forced insurers to cover gender dysphoria treatment and gender affirming care for minors between 13 and 17 without their parents' consent. They just worked with any healthcare provider and the kid, the teen, without telling the policy holder themselves.
So, that's what I was going to say. That's all I could find also.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking.
It didn't pass?
It did pass.
Oh, it did pass.
Yeah, it passed last year.
I'm going to move this just a little bit again. Sorry.
February 2. So it would have passed in February of 2022. So this article was from February of 2023, and it passed the year before that.
Yeah.
So
they're going to the doctor independently.
The kid can go to the doctor independently without the parents knowing, between the ages of 13 and 17.
And use the parents' insurance without their consent too. Is what it said.
Yeah. Policyholders authorization. I find that as a problem.
Yeah.
Because you feel bad for a kid that thinks that, but not all doctors some doctors are trustworthy, I suppose, but some of them have an agenda, and they're going to just say, yeah, let's transition you. And then your parent doesn't know it. Like, I would be crazy if I had a kid and that happened to me. Like,
yeah.
You're not even going to talk to me. Like, come on. Like, to me, that's, again, it's not that children are not, I hate the concept. They're all our children. No, they're the parents' children. It is what it is. They're not ours.
Yeah.
Zach's children are not my children. Cam's children are not my children. They're Cam's and Zach's.
Yeah.
So I have a heart. That one. I misspoke on the school thing, but I knew it could go without the parental consent.
Yeah, and you want to protect the kids, but yet,
parents have to be involved in that.
That's what I kind of said, was just a safe space. If they don't think the house is a safe space for them, but then they don't have to tell them.
I think there's another one somewhere that they can take them. Like, it can go into the Child Protective Service. I gotta have to keep looking, but
there's a lot on it.
And I'd be interested if, like, American Medical Association, like, supported that, or Pediatric Association, and why,
right.
Where are they? Yeah.
Interesting stuff. Going back to Mike McDonald, and you brought up, I don't remember how you, just a second ago, but I was going to say that when I read some comments after his switch of parties, there was a few people that were saying how, I voted for you, and now I'm not going to,
Oh, yeah.
now I'm not going to have my representation on my side of the aisle. And I don't remember exactly what you said that made me think of that, though. How you would...
Oh, was it the filibuster numbers?
No, it was just recently, literally just maybe like 3 minutes ago, but that's okay. It was something that making sure that on each piece of information, so each policy or each whatever, you have a differencing of opinion. So
I know pretty much every person I vote for, I don't agree 100% with.
Right.
And that's what I'm trying to get at is where, somebody might vote for
I
you
try
on
to
one
find
policy.
one that I agree with.
That's
the
what I'm
most.
talking about.
Yeah. That, leaders can listen to every single person, but people are going to have very opposing views. And then they have to be trusted with that information. So I guess for me, I would want to elect a leader who I know is going to listen to everyone. I know they're going to be thoughtful. I know they're going to be educated. They're going to take data into consideration.
Right.
And that I trust their character.
Right. I was just going to say that, speaking of the long form again, how something like this, and maybe senators should do something like this more often, where they can say their thoughts on certain bills at this point in time, and people can get a better look at how they actually feel on multiple things. All three of you are running on a few topics, and then people think that's all.
Yeah.
That's my only thoughts, and that's what we're going to do, and I'm going to do 4 years of that.
Oh, yeah. No, you have to run on, and they tell you, I think when I first wrote down all the things I care about, it was 15 things. And you can't put out a Miller with that.
No.
You have to kind of narrow it down and simplify it and have 3 or 4 top issues, but it doesn't mean you don't care about a lot more.
Right.
And you're going to do a lot more.
I guess that's what I was trying to kind of say, is that there's more to it.
Yeah. And senators have to be educated on everybody else's priorities too in their bills, because you're going to cast a vote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you do have to, there's definitely a lot to learn.
And that is one thing I will tell you. I've heard from multiple of them that they don't always know what's going on in all the bills, and then casting a vote.
Yeah. And that's where it comes back to people need time. They need to be not working multiple other jobs. They need to be able to, dedicate themselves to this position fully. But yeah, I think, and I think we're probably different in maybe some of the things that are our top priorities, not, mine would be conservation and education.
Yeah, they're not the
that's
same.
what I know.
Yeah.
And
all three of them are different.
Yeah. Dover knows other, real estate better and other things, and Regal knows ag. And so it's maybe more of, those top priorities. It doesn't mean we disagree on everything.
Right. I think at the forum, you guys were a lot in coercion, not coercion, that's the wrong word, cohesion. You guys are kind of thinking the same way on a lot of the questions that were asked anyway at the forum.
Yeah.
It seemed like anyway.
A 2-minute thing was really hard.
I was going to ask you about that, but I didn't know how you wanted to.
Oh gosh.
Did you think that was it should have been done differently? Yeah.
Yeah. But you're trying to get through a lot of questions.
There's only 4 questions.
We didn't know what they were either. We knew some categories, but we did not know the questions. And if you do the 2 minutes and then you do the rebuttal. So it's an interesting format. It's kind of a debate, but not really. I don't think any of us came out and were like, you're wrong. I mean, it was maybe just people could infer some differences. Yeah. But
on the mayoral side, every single one that was asked were something that we asked of all the city people
on our podcast.
Really?
Yeah, it was kind of funny.
Yeah. Except for the listener questions.
Yeah. Or we just kind of patted ourselves on the back for that one.
Just go ahead.
They copied us.
Well, 2 or 3 of them were word for word, and the rest of them were kind of worded a little bit different.
We just found it interesting.
But it's harder to see the differences in that format than
100%.
Oh,
that's why we want to do this style.
So we're glad you're here.
Yeah.
So kind of going back to Mike McDonald again, and we discussed on the break that we maybe want to discuss a little bit about abortion. Sure. So what are your thoughts on abortion?
Yeah. Yeah. I know that there's a lot of different diversity of opinions in this district on it. I think because of my faith, that, everything for me comes back to a dignity of life and valuing that. And in theology, we call it the imago Dei, like the image of God in every single person. And so I see even the potential for life as precious. And that's something that I want to protect and preserve. And so, I think it's not just it's in the womb, but it's also out of the womb. And I think that part of the conversation gets lost. People maybe aren't as protective when it comes to supporting good medical care or, our nitrate issue, we have a 16% birth defect rate. So if you really care about protecting life, why are we not doing more to protect, and the average birth defect rate in the country is 2 or 3%. So we're so much higher, and UNMC thinks that that's linked to the nitrates and the atrazine. So I think I'm trying to think, okay, it's not just about abortion though. There's other ways we can be protecting both the unborn and the born. I want to protect life for the whole life, and before it and before our flourishing. And I think there's nuances when it comes to like protecting IVF, is something I would be strong on too. That's coming up more in the States because of the Alabama ruling. And then also I think just, having exceptions like are very, very important, and rape. And I think when it comes to the life of the mother and, and people say that's rare, but I've had 2 or 3 friends that were in that situation where they had 2 of them trisomy 18 babies that were going to die. And the doctor said, your health is at risk. They had other kids at home. They had to make those really hard decisions. Do I terminate or not? And I think that should be left up to that person, that their family, whether or not they want to do that. And she wasn't in Nebraska, she was in another state, but they had a really short window when they had to decide. And that was a problem because she only had she was able to hear from one doctor who thought she should have the abortion, but then she was under a crunch of time. Like she had to abort now, but she needed more time to be able to get a second opinion and a third opinion and to be able to make an informed decision. And so some of these state laws really prevent that. And I think, people shouldn't be having to cross state lines and, or be scared that they're going to be convicted of a crime when they really were just, trying to protect themselves, and but they had to go out of state to do it.
I think it's because the conversation's gone so far as to basically kill the baby as it's fully grown. About
the birth canal,
in the birth canal, ready to go.
There's some of them that'll say up to and including birth. There's politicians that have literally said it.
And I think that's
infanticide it just baffles me.
It's just one of those things where you give an inch and then a mile gets taken. So we can find a place to stop. Yeah, that's our thing. And there has to be a place where we can. Obviously, we know there's needs for it to be done.
Yeah.
Right. So let's find a happy medium somewhere. Yeah. Obviously, closer to when conception.
I truly believe that most everybody is on the side of what we used to be was safe, legal, and rare. Right. But then that went out the window because everybody wanted till up to including birth, which I think is batshit crazy. And you are an evil person if that's what you want to do. That's the way I look at it. I believe that it's a moral thing for me. Health of the mother is one thing, and life of the mother. We've always, I think everybody is.
The baby's life isn't more important.
Yeah, I think everybody is on the agreement. We're good there. I go both ways on the rape side. I know it sucks, but I don't think it's good to punish evil by creating evil on something else. It's hard to say. And usually I would say if you're there, you're going to meet the window of whatever the weak band. You're good. If you don't want it, you're going to get rid of it early enough. You're not going to go enough window 3/4 term and say, well, it's a rape baby. So now I'm going to.
I think sometimes it depends on the age of the mother too. Like, 12, 13
being afraid. I can understand that.
Don't even know what's happening to them. They're pregnant and the parents didn't know what had happened to them. And it was against their consent. And some of their bodies are not even developed enough to have a kid. Yeah. And that could become super dangerous.
Right.
But yeah, I think making it less necessary, like we were talking about, like you can make it less available or you can make it less necessary. And when you make it less available, it doesn't actually stop abortions from happening. They just happen in a less safe way.
Right.
And
for sure,
70,000 people die annually in like unsafe abortions. And and that's globally, but, so I think also paying attention to like, how can we just make it less necessary, and working on emergency contraceptive care, making birth control more easily available. Just an anecdotal story. My sister, she doesn't want me to talk about this, but she was trying to get contraceptive care in a state that like they made her come back twice, before they would give it to her. And so I think sometimes there's just obstacles that are put in the way. And so I think that's something we could definitely have some improvement in. And just maternal health care in general, like giving birth in the United States is still like a dangerous thing. Yeah. We have the top mortality rates for mothers of any first world country.
Do you think that's because they're trying to turn and burn them out of the ward?
Oh,
Do you think it's a money issue at the hospitals?
I've heard it's like lack of prenatal care sometimes, lack of healthcare, and that can be in rural areas where there's just not enough services. Like we're in a maternal care desert here, something I'd like to work on. Yeah, lack of, and I think sometimes the doctor's not listening to the patients well. I think advocacy is an issue, and then post birth care, and maybe not getting the necessary checkups or precautions that need to be taken to protect them. Yeah.
Interesting. It's a hot topic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's literally a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
If we're gonna be honest about abortion,
so my thing is, if you're gonna call it life and death, I just don't understand why there's not more conversations about it to come to a point where we're not literally just fighting about it and nothing gets done.
Because one side will put limits on it and one side won't.
Right. I just don't understand why we can't. Why one side won't. We always talk about how we feel that the right, the Republicans have really. He doesn't like me to use the word. He doesn't like me to use the word compromise because he thinks that we've compromised enough on a lot of things.
Keep moving,
and we keep moving the needle, and we're not getting a whole lot from the other side.
But I look at it like I have a belief in abortion that's my belief, and I can't come off that belief.
Right.
Like I can't. I have to. The way I look at it is I have to be able to go into my afterlife knowing that I felt a certain way. I'm not going to change where I'm at on that. Like it just.
And I agree with you, but you also still saw that and you said it before. There needs to be limits. You don't think it should be nothing at all, right? Obviously, you might, but you still see that there is a need for certain.
We can have limits,
right? So I just don't understand why we can't come to that agreement.
Yeah. And I think there's different moral bases where people are coming from too, where they do see it as fetus and tissue and kind of the medical side of it up until a certain stage, maybe the stage of viability. They don't see it as being having its own rights, its own human rights, but then maybe Catholics or other people see that differently.
So that's the other argument. I've heard that before. So because the Constitution gives everybody in America, not citizen, non-citizen, these inalienable rights. Right. So when does life begin? Like, so the Supreme Court's got to bring that up. If that's where we're going to go on this, we got to go down that path.
And here's the nuanced question too of like, when is conception happen? Because it doesn't happen with intercourse. Like it can happen anytime, like up to 6 days later. Like, so, nobody knows the moment where that begins either.
So, and it would never be, I don't think you'd never get a Supreme Court to say life begins at conception. So it's a weeks thing. Like, you're pregnant at that point. What are we talking about? Yeah. So I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit here. If we're gonna talk about tissue and zygote and all this other stuff, well, what is a human?
Right.
Are you a human? Are you non-human when you're in the birth canal, but the minute you come out of it, you're now a human, and now you have these rights? Or do you have rights when you are a viable baby at 6, 7, 8 months, and before 9 months, you'd be a preemie, but you can literally live. There's babies that are born early and they live.
And the age of viability's changed too. I think it used to be like 30 weeks, and now it's I think as low as 23, 22 weeks.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And that's changed with science. And I think for me too, it's like, I, as a Christian, it's, when do you get a soul? Like, when do you have, when does that happen?
People don't like when you bring that up though,
Yeah. But it's also a new conversation. Studying religious history, like evangelicals actually never really weighed on abortion until recently, because till the 70s, it became a thing, or 80s, but it was seen as the Catholic issue, and evangelicals were mostly about, that's your personal choice. And that's really changed. It's become politicized, and that's what frustrates me is when these moral issues do become they're used to become a hot political issue.
Obviously, if somebody switches parties because of it,
I don't see it as a political issue. I'll be totally honest with you.
Right.
Abortion to me is not a political issue.
I'm just saying that it's being used as one. Is what we're trying to see.
Yeah. And at one time, I don't know if it was in Judaism, like they saw, or it might have actually even been in early Catholicism, like they saw life as when you took your first breath. Like that's when it happened. So we've changed and evolved with science. And yeah, I guess it's like, I can see it from both ways. Like if I didn't have, this faith tradition and these beliefs, like I can understand where some people would say, well, like, I don't want to be told what to do with my body either. But it's just kind of like, that's not where I stand, but
Yeah.
I can see where people come from that.
I'm sure Vance and I are going to get a lot of hate for speaking on that. As
I really don't care. I think people that know
It's the
me,
first time you've talked about it?
we've talked about it on
Okay.
our
A
other
little bit.
podcast, but
Mhm.
usually
that know
it's
me
just
know
us
my
two
views.
talking about it.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to get some hate for being men talking to a woman about abortion. I think we get it.
Oh, sure.
You get that. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I obviously listen to women, but I mean, everybody can weigh in on it.
Right. Well, I like that belief because there are some women that don't think that men should talk about it at all. So I do appreciate you.
100% wrong.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
And I also think like it's been eye opening for me to talk to so many pro-choice Republicans actually in this community and pro-life Democrats. So it's opened my eyes to see like there's not a unified thought on this. And I guess personally, like,
and that's why it shouldn't be a political issue because it's not.
yeah,
It's
Or,
more of a
like,
moral value
a single topic issue. I think a lot of people, they want to know your stance and then like that's all that matters, which I mean, for people that is the most important value, I get that, but also kind of expanding your mind to see where else do they fall in line that actually could help prevent abortions. Like if they're actually helping promote better birth control access, that would prevent abortions from happening because nobody wants abortions, likes abortions.
There's people that have done, there's people that shout it out. I mean, but
I think most people would say like, let's prevent it from happening in the first, like needing to be happening.
Right.
In the first place.
it's the political activist celebrities that'll.
It's
like,
the
I'm
few
so
that
glad I
are
had
that are.
it.
It's the few that are swaying the many in some situations, which happens far too often.
Yeah.
Right now, in my
I feel
opinion.
bad for anybody that's gone through it because I think it's a terrible thing.
It's a terrible thing. Yeah.
I don't I get sickened by the people that say they are happy they had one. That's where I feel
Because it's got to be a
my
terrible
soul.
experience.
I know. I
don't understand how you could go through something like that and be like, yeah, I'm so happy I did that.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
I'll have to send you an article. There was some data that showed like, I don't know if it was a year after or 2 years after, like the people that had the kid were glad they did it and the people that had the abortion were glad they did it. But I mean, you don't really know the alternative of what your life would have looked like, but
and that's with any choice though. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd love to read that though. Send it over.
Yeah.
Anything else we guys do we get all of our thoughts out on abortion?
I think we're good on that one.
Are you good, Melissa?
Yeah, I guess I would say like I think you can. My goal would be to be on any issue to be compassionate, to have compassion, and I haven't been in that situation either. So it is hard to know like what's going through your mind and where you would what you would do. So I think you can be conservative on issues and also be really compassionate and try to put yourself in that person.
I truly believe we can find a limit, like we talked about.
Yeah.
Let's just not make it
I guess.
up to including birth. That's let's start there and let's go this way.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we'll move on from abortion.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah. Take a deep breath. Take a drink. It was a good conversation though. So you firmly believe in putting people over politics. How do you feel you're going to be able to do that?
I know it's such a catchphrase, and probably every politician would say that.
I guess. What's your view? Like, why was that important to you? I guess
that was important because I guess seeing the divisiveness just all over the country, but also in Nebraska, and people really kind of getting into camps, and and seeing the pressure that people are under to align totally within their party and their camp. And maybe this McDonald thing is a good example of like, what's going to happen if I sway? And so I wanted to bring it back to like, why do we exist? Like, what is our job as a politician, as a leader? It's to represent these people and the people that need the extra supports and help of, that government programs can provide. And so I think wanting them to take center stage, like wanting the people to take center stage and not party agendas. And, there can be pressure to align with the governor or, the national parties. And I don't like that. I think on our Capitol, like it even it doesn't say that it's the, the label isn't like the U.S. or the Nebraska Capitol or the unicameral. It's actually the counties are all around the base of the Capitol. And so that's what we need to keep in mind is we're here for the people.
it should be the way it is.
Yeah.
I get it.
And it's hard when there's people have different ideas of what they want you to do. And I guess everybody will feel maybe underrepresented or misrepresented at some point because the person didn't do what they preferred.
What's going to happen?
It's going to happen. You can't please everyone. So I think the value of being willing to listen to everyone, being available, being open-minded, and realizing like if I change my mind on this, it's not because the party is wanting me to change my mind on this. It's probably because I learned and I grew and I heard people's stories.
Right. That's a good answer. You talked about creating policies that open up more opportunities. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I think the opportunities for people to buy a home, to be able to have more affordable housing options, to be able to increase the number of houses we can build to hopefully reduce that price it more. A lot of people, from when I lived in Nebraska before, a lot of my friends have left and not come back. And, I did come back and I'm glad I did, but I'm seeing young people, the brain drain issue and people leaving for different economic opportunities or being able to buy a house or start a family. And I guess I want to be able to help. That shouldn't be the reason like people don't come back. It's because they can't get a house
right.
and or find childcare. And so when I talk to different industry leaders in town at Nucor and Norfolk Island Metal, they've said like their workforce shortages are connected to the housing and the childcare. It's all kind of a triangle and it all affects one another.
Right.
And so, they really want the legislator to really work on the housing and childcare aspect of it. And they think that'll help boost their workforce. So yeah, I guess I want to see us become a community that draws people back home again, or people don't feel like they need to leave.
Right.
For opportunities.
I'm glad you expanded on that because I think some people might read that as maybe job opportunities or maybe focus on one thing. So it's nice that you expanded on multiple aspects of that.
Yeah.
That was the gist of our questions. So that was everything we had prepared for you. We do have one listener question that got sent to us.
Okay.
So this is going to be verbatim of what they said.
Okay.
So this is not coming from us at all. What are your thoughts on LB 66? This would outline the provisions for registering all-terrain vehicles and utility terrain vehicles. With this legislation, Nebraskans would be permitted to drive registered ATVs and UTVs on county roads. LB 66 allows for counties and municipalities to pass an ordinance granting street use of vehicles in their respective jurisdictions, and these vehicles would be prohibited from driving on any interstate, expressway, freeway, or state highways. Furthermore, LB 66 requires the use of a helmet or a seatbelt when operating the ATV or UTV.
So currently they are not allowed?
I think
so.
Yeah. Summarize this for me.
You can drive a four-wheeler on a county road, but you have to have a flag and you have to be, it's like on a farm use. You can do that stuff on farm use. Currently, Battle Creek, Norfolk, I think Madison's got a licensing, Pierce has got a licensing.
Yeah. I think
you
this
can
would make
license them.
Yeah, I think this would make it statewide for cities. I think is what.
But I absolutely don't want this because of the helmet and seatbelt. That's not currently law.
Oh, you don't want that required?
I don't think we don't have a helmet for motorcycles, so why do we have to have a helmet?
Did that just get changed? Because I used to have a scooter and
I just saw a guy driving a motorcycle or two years ago
without one. So it's been a couple years.
I think it is a change though.
It was just recently changed. Yeah.
So I think I'm all for wearing a helmet if you're doing crazy stuff, but if I'm driving from the farm to the pasture, I'm not wearing a helmet on the four-wheeler. It's just not happening.
If I can give some context to the person that asked this, I think it's because it would make it statewide for the cities, and I think that's what he may want. Mm-hmm. So I think he wants your thoughts on that piece of it, where it's a state regulation that all cities just allow it.
Okay.
Whereas like Norfolk had to pass it as a city.
Yeah.
Battle Creek had to pass it as a city.
And they had passed a golf cart ordinance.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I'd want to read more about it, like every decision, like become educated and hear the pros and cons. But I mean, again, being for life, like I'm going to be for what is safe. I think I know people also want freedom though, to make their own decisions of what is safe and not. But I think if it shows that it's not detrimental to them or other motorists on the road or other people on the road, then it should be okay. I think I'm kind of a fan of helmets, I guess, as far as safety, but Yeah. I mean, I guess there's always personal choice.
I can see helmets on like interstates,
but you
driving.
can't be on the interstate anyways.
Right. Yeah. I'm just saying where I think helmets are needed.
I think it's an unnecessary law because the towns are already doing it themselves.
Right.
Okay.
Like Battle Creek's got, I mean, and the town's getting the revenue. We license our 4-wheeler and Ranger for maybe $100 a year, $150 a year in the town of Battle Creek. Yeah.
So that's interesting.
And we can't drive between, in town, you can't drive dawn to dusk, only dawn to dusk.
Gotcha. Okay.
So.
Interesting.
And was it up this session?
January, it would have been last year.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't know.
I can look it up.
I didn't look enough into it. I just saw I just asked the question because they put it on.
I hadn't heard of it until this was sent to us.
Yeah.
If we're going to be totally honest.
Yeah.
I'm just reading parts of it. I'm not a fan of it, but
yeah. Well, you can look it up. I am going to keep us kind of moving.
Okay.
So I think we're hitting the 2-hour mark.
Okay.
We only got a few questions left for you. So these next questions we ask to everybody that's been on our podcast, not just you candidates.
Okay.
So how do you feel about where the state of our country is right now? And do you feel that we are being well represented at the federal level?
I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but I think we're very divided. There's just some issues in our discourse. Represented, I think some people feel like they are and others don't. I think there's a lot of things that I would like to see done, a lot of protections. I was just in DC and we met with the delegation and, again, water quality and public health, like those are things that I want to advocate for. And yeah, they're not everybody's priorities. So I think some people will feel like they are represented and others will feel like they're not listened to as much, but I haven't had as much experience, trying to reach out and get their attention as other people have.
Mm-hmm.
But I think people could always do better though. I think being in touch with the people coming back home, the leaders being immersed in their community and really being available and people can access them is very important for feeling represented.
Gotcha. Do you feel that the systems that are in place still work in today's time? Talking about the two-party system.
Absolutely not.
So,
I'm not a fan of the two-party system.
Do you have thoughts on how to fix that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just so much in-party fighting themselves. Like each party needs to really, there has a lot of work to do. Because I mean, they're kind of splintering too into it's kind of becoming 4 parties,
right,
or more. So I just want to see more candidates who are independent, more third-party candidates. I think the more we have, the more it will grow and people will have more options. Also, I need to learn more about it, but I'm fascinated with states that have a rank system when they vote. I think California has it. And
I don't know that I've ever heard
of it. Okay. California does. I know Alaska does.
Okay. And so you can vote for more than one candidate and it's not necessarily partisan ballots. It might not just be one Republican and one Democrat that makes it out. It would be kind of like what we'd have.
California's got a runoff. They're a runoff system.
Oh, okay.
So similar to our primary system, it's a runoff system.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, I need to learn more about it, but just having some alternative methods, I think our nonpartisan legislature is amazing. More states could do that too. Top 2 candidates go forward. It's not based on your political affiliation at all. But yeah, I mean, I guess the growing numbers in the independent's not a party, but who are not affiliated with a party shows that we want something different.
Well, I think that shows that people know that the system's not working.
Yeah.
In the way that it is right now.
Yeah.
Talking about the infighting, talking about just sometimes Vance will call it the uniparty. They're all just in it together anyway. It's not really 2 parties. They're just at the federal level. They're all scratch your back, you scratch mine. Yeah. Well,
I go back and forth on this thing all the time because I like parts of it because you have to have a team backing. To get real change, you probably need a little bit of a team backing. You go to the UK and the parliament system, and they have 5, 6, 7, 8 parties, and it's so conglomerated and so weird. And I mean, stuff changes all the time, and it's hard to get a cohesive unit going when you do that type of thing.
Yeah.
I get the point. I'm upset with how it's working, but I don't know how to fix it. And I don't think we need a bunch of parties, because then it just becomes too many chiefs, not enough Indians, to use that term. It's just not enough. We're not moving in a direction. But then again, I enjoy a government that doesn't do anything. So that's my personal opinion. I've made that clear. I want my government to do not a damn thing.
He wants one guy sitting in an office, and that's about it.
I'll pay $60,000 a year.
Swanson?
Yes, that's exactly what he wants.
He's my spirit animal.
Oh my gosh. Well,
that character is my spirit animal.
Didn't it used to be that like the vice president would be the person that didn't win the election? I think we used to have that. There would be like the two candidates, and the top vote getter was president, and the runner up, even if they were a different party,
I've always
was the vice
thought
president.
that
It was like in the 1800s.
that'd be a good. I mean,
I
I
need
kind of
to
like
fact check
that.
this again, but I'm pretty.
I kind of like that
But
though.
we'd have to talk.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Maybe. Well, I
I
probably
like the
I
idea.
didn't know that was a thing.
I think it was. Now that you say
I
that,
think it was, and I don't know when it changed.
And I actually kinda like that idea.
Lincoln, with Lincoln, or maybe it was before Lincoln, but
Had to be before Lincoln.
I have been fascinated with, like what.
well, because then we wouldn't end up with these facade vice presidents. You know what I mean?
like what do you mean by facade? Like,
I
if you
think
don't feel
there's
like they
some
have a
people that don't
role-
do a whole lot.
Oh, okay.
Some vice
Maybe they do
presidents
more behind
don't
the
do a whole.
scenes.
They must, or it just
Yeah.
doesn't get reported on.
Yeah.
But like I
They're not
didn't
just
hear a whole lot
symbolic,
about
though.
Mike Pence. I've heard zero of anything of Kamala doing in any.
I mean,
She can break a Senate tie.
she's the she's the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Right, so that's okay, but
They're the
You confirm the election.
Yeah, the
and-
vice
but
president.
I mean, doing
the
something in office,
Senate
to
president.
change for good, not just sit there to do your whatever.
Yeah.
That
Yeah. I'm sure they have like their roles, but they don't take like center stage.
yeah.
But they could. They could be. I mean, if you pick the right one, but people don't pick
Right.
They don't pick that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess something else kind of on topic, like I've thought a lot about is when you get, the higher you get in politics, like, can people stay in it for the right motives? Like, can
Not get
this
corrupted,
question,
you mean?
Like, can a good person actually be in
I question
higher
that all
level
the time.
politics? Because I think you start out with so many ideals
Mm-hmm.
and, you're in it, for the right reasons to help people, but you see along the way, like, compromise and people trying to sway you. And you think, okay, well, I need to give in, or I need to take this money and vote with them in order to keep moving up so I can do more and I can be better for the people I started for. But by that time, like, you have been,
They've already been bought.
They've already been
well,
bought.
like I think about the formation of your soul, right? Like
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
become deformed.
Right.
And I don't know if you can continue to make good choices, like, because you've already compromised so much along the way to get to that top place. So it's like, can people who get there actually, like, are they still good?
And that's why I talk about younger blood coming in. That's why the federal level, we need term limits, and we need new people in there, because they're just there for that reason. They've already been corrupted. They're already there. They're scratching each other's back, and we got to get away from that.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah. I know. You want people to like hold on to that, those initial reasons for
Mhm.
why we're there. But
Right.
does power corrupt? I mean,
Yep.
probably.
Yep. We'll move on from that.
Okay.
We could get real heated on that one, but so where do you see yourself going in the future? Are you enjoying where you are? Do you see yourself staying in Northeast Nebraska?
Yeah, I definitely hope so. If I can afford a house and, start a family, like, that would be great. But yeah, I mean, I moved back, kind of like suddenly my dad died really unexpectedly. And that is a part of my story of why I came back. But I think, and I thought it would be short term, and then I got more and more invested, and I stayed, and I'm glad I did. And I want to stick around. I want to continue to help, be a positive voice and be an asset for this community. I think with my career, I don't know where that's going to go exactly. I tried to kind of leave education, and then it keeps bringing back again.
It's tough to leave education. It really is.
Yeah. And I like what I do right now with tutoring and being flexible. I like the chaplain role as well. Once I get ordained, that might open up some other opportunities, but I do hope, to stay here. And I think I've learned, politics is really tough. And, I've had, a lot of heartbreak over it, and it's been really painful at times, but there's so much reward in actually advocating. And I think that's how I've been made is, just to be someone who will help speak up for people. And so I hope in some capacity, whether I get this position or not, like I want to stay involved as an advocate and be for our community.
That's awesome. So we want to give you a couple minutes uninterrupted to give whatever thoughts you want to our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm not traditional, and I know I'm not, the person that maybe is typically elected to state senate, and I have a variety of backgrounds, but I think that is a positive thing. And I think being in touch with this community and its needs, being someone who can identify with some of the issues, of renting and with affordable housing. And, I have like kind of I know what this feels like. And I think I'm someone who those differences can be a good thing in higher level politics. And I just want to keep showing people that there is somebody in office who really cares and really does want to help make their lives a little bit easier. And the world is a hard place. So I guess that's what I kind of said this at the forum, like I can bring my heart, and I think that is, that's needed. And, I hope people can see that I will always try and just, do the thing that, is the most caring and humane, and, be able for people to know that there is someone who really will listen and see them.
That's good. That is very good. Hopefully we didn't rack your nerves too much through this whole thing.
I am a little nervous still, but maybe
we're done now.
I mean, it's basically over.
It's over. No, you're good. I think you did a good job. We really appreciate you making time to be here today and giving us your thoughts. We hope the listeners, listen and just form their own opinion about each candidate.
Yeah.
So any last thoughts? Any final thoughts about being here?
No, I hope that too. I hope people will reach out to me with questions. People already have, and I try to answer, and I also usually offer to go out to coffee. Like, let's go and let's talk about it. And because a lot of these issues are a conversation, and I want to hear where are you coming from? So I hope people will do that.
Definitely. So reach out to her if you guys want to speak with her. She likes to go get coffee, she said. So anyway, again, we really appreciate you being here. Big thanks to our producer, Cameron Meyer, stepping in for Ryan Battershaw today, my co-host, Vance Neidig, and we will see you guys all next week.